Thank you, Leader. With regard to the Q3 financial performance, the variations from Q2, you've described them, although the words were chosen quite carefully in terms of how this in-year overspend has been managed between Q2 and Q3. But there's £400,000 which has gone to capital on the ADAPT programme, £2 million that has gone into capital on the life and reablement, £2.7 million of highway costs has now been charged to capital, £900,000 on facilities management has gone to capital, £1.7 million to Croydon Digital Services on capital. That list is £7.7 million, which at Q2 was sitting in revenue, and after a review by Q3 had all been charged to capital. This means that you've paid for that £7.7 million from borrowing. Council borrowing will be higher by that amount because it is not sitting within revenue anymore. You haven't actually dealt with the underlying causes of the overspend. What you've done is plugged a gap, and I understand that you described it as things that couldn't be repeated, but to spell it out, you've borrowed money to fill the overspend in year. And I think that's a very worrying position for us to find this council in. And I do hope that we don't see that repeated in future years. With regard to the Treasury Management paper, this year was the point at which Croydon Council passed £1 billion in terms of the debt that it's carrying. In this paper, in a couple of years' time, that's going to reach £2 billion. This is actually starting to pick up a certain level of notice in national press with regard to the sort of councils and the levels of debt that they are carrying and comparing it to the levels of reserve. Exactly how much risk do you think we are now taking with the current policy in terms of how we're managing the current council's finances?
I think, Councillor Cummins, what I think had been a pretty mature debate and well-informed debate from both sides until this point. You sound like you're trying to scaremonger to me. This council, as you well know, is making some significant investments, all of them currently in borough as well, that are bringing some not inconsiderable returns directly to the money we can invest in the front line. Now, I know that's not all of the money you're referring to, but you're portraying borrowing as though it's a one-way street. In many cases, we're borrowing to invest, whether it's in specific acquisitions or whether it's in terms of services and reducing overall demand going forward. So I think the sometimes instinct of some in the Tory party to sort of view borrowing as a bad thing, it can be, but if it's prudent, it's well managed, and it's you know, in the end going to produce revenue income, then it's something to be supported. And I understand is very much the current line coming out of number 10 Downing Street, which I would have thought you would have been supportive of. But good questions.